Hi, Mike DePung here. Welcome to Spirit Hill. Spirit healing in love and light. Um, as you're going to hear today, maybe as an English teacher, I should have chosen a different preposition. Maybe it should be healing into love and light, but that's kind of picky stuff, and we don't need to dwell on that too much. But I will explain that a little bit today. I'm going to try to bring together some elements of something that happened to me, and I'm going to share a very personal story of healing that might just help some of you who are listening. Which, by the way, how is your healing going? I'm so glad you're here. And I hope that you're working, and I would like to encourage you to work a little bit um, every day on considering of going within and reflecting on the kinds of things we speak about, but especially of communing with your own heart and allowing that to give the light that's needed to expose other things. So enough said there. I'll be off on another tangent. Uh, this is not a game. This isn't something that I just do for fun. It's me. It's who I am. And healing isn't just a game. It's not something that's for to help me feel good for an afternoon. It might do that, but it's certainly not meant to just be a diversionary pleasure and addition, like so many people treat religion or their faith or their church affiliations in a lot of way. You go and you feel good for a couple hours on a certain day of the week, and then you go back and there's this box. We put it in a box, and no, it's an organic whole. And so this healing stuff is the reason why we came here. Sometimes religion helps with that, many times not, and other things too. But let me go into this. Again, I want to share some elements that brought me to what I'm going to share with you today. So they seem kind of disparate at first, but I promise you I will bring them together. Healing really are different paths of awakening for the realization of why we came here, for the manifestation of why we came, to enjoy part of our creation as spirit incarnate. And it begins with this, our awakening to heart, our awakening to what other people call it different things, our awakening to highest self and enlightenment, in a sense of understanding that we are here in a unity. And as we awaken, as we continue in the path of healing, we are bringing into play the whole unity that we have with all here, and all is spirit, and it's manifested in different ways, and each way is unique. Every blade of grass, every rock, every drop of water, all has this essence of spirit in it. And we see ourselves, when we begin to see ourselves in unity with that, this is part of healing. It's not always a pleasant journey. In fact, it's very challenging. Healing wasn't meant to be a pleasant journey in terms of everything's just beautiful, and that's what we work towards as much as we can get. And this is kind of like the very popular thing right now, this prosperity gospel that many so-called Christians are preaching. And I don't want to say so-called, I don't want to denigrate what they're doing. It's their thing, it's their bag, and I don't care. But this idea that we came here to get rich, get rich, get rich, get things, get things, get things. No, we came here to heal, and healing can be a messy and painful thing sometimes, but we do it because it's why we came, to realize I am spirit incarnate. There's divinity, I am divinity, and I want to see all of this work about me, just how we relate, how we enjoy this. And that's why we came here, to enjoy and relate this, and to relate to all of this, to understand this unity. So when we do the work, and this is why I say it's not always pleasant, you've got to do some work. I've got to do the work, and I'm going to share some of that work that I've done. We can be pleased, we can delight, and we do. So healing isn't really just in love and light, but it's sometimes healing into love and light, healing into love and light, healing from fear and insecurities into love, healing from darkness and shadows into light. But we need, and it's kind of this circular thing, we need love and light to do this. And that's why it all begins with going to heart, to looking into and seeing that you are, that I am spirit incarnate, that I have all the light, that I have it all within me to reach out and relate to and integrate all of this. So I hope that is an encouragement to you to do some of this work. So here are the things that happened to me this past week, and I want to do it because Spirit will use, our hearts will reach out and connect with the spirits around us. The things that are known to us, the talents and skills that we have developed, the personality traits we have, the ways we think, and it will use uniquely. There's no one way to do this. But because I was an English teacher, I am an English teacher, so oftentimes I've mentioned before, poetry is part of the thing. And Walt Whitman is a big one because I see that he understood a lot of what I'm talking about. He might not have used the same language. I don't know that he ever spoke of this completely in a way, but as I analyze and look at his poetry and read it and enjoy it, I see these principles that are working there. And the very last poem that he published, that he wrote, is what Spirit brought to me. And I will say this is about a healing journey that I've been on, a healing episode, one of the healing events for the last couple of weeks. And I was seeking the help of my guides, spirits, my team of unseens, every night, because I know I was just receiving all this energy from various sources of spirit. And I didn't know what to do with it completely. And I still know there are lots of it that I just receive, I just have allowed to come in. But I think I was receiving a lot of it for this specific event I'm going to talk about. So I asked the spirits for help. And the poem, boom, my heart connects with all that is about me, with what the energies that spirits share from around me. And this is what I heard from Walt Whitman, the very last poem he ever wrote, called Goodbye, My Fancy. Ever heard people talk about, I fancy this or fancy that, mean I delight in, I like it. And so he's saying, goodbye, my fancy. What my delight? What is it? Well, let's read and see. Goodbye, my fancy. Farewell, dear mate, dear love. I'm going away. I know not where, or to what fortune, or whether I may ever see you again. So, goodbye, my fancy. Now for my last. Let me look back for a moment. The slower, fainter ticking of the clock is in me. Exit. Nightfall. And soon the heart thud stopping. Long have we lived, joyed, caressed together, delightful. Now, separation. Goodbye, my fancy. Yet, let me not be too hasty. Long indeed have we lived, slept, filtered, become really blended into one. Then if we die together. Yes, we'll remain one. If we go anywhere, we'll go together to meet what happens. Maybe we'll be better off and blither and learn something. Maybe it is yourself now really, yourself now really ushering me to the true songs. Who knows? And that's really an interesting statement. He's got, well, here are his writings, all of this over the course of a lifetime, over the course of about 50 some odd years. And he says, maybe I haven't been wholly singing the songs that are of me. And yet he says, who knows? he's sensing that there's his heart within him. Maybe it is you, the mortal knob, really undoing, turning. Maybe you're the reason why I'm coming to the end of my life. So now finally, goodbye and hail, my fancy. And that's the way he ends it. He realizes, yes, it's goodbye in terms of his heart self, his highest self, relating to a physical world here that he came to enjoy and see, and he experienced the work that he did of all this poetry and other very important work that he did. But he realizes, hey, this is not the end. It's hail. It's hello there. My soul, we're one. My heart, we're one. And so he has this sense of these polar polarities within him, that there is a physical and that there is heart. And he's saying, I'm not leaving anything. It's moving on to something new, and I'm welcoming it. So he recognizes this. Well, how does this work? Well, let me go on. On Sunday morning, I had pulled a couple of cards from, let me get it here. This again, these beautiful shaman oracle cards, this deck with these beautiful cards. And two of the cards I pulled, and I forgot to even pull them out, and I wanted to for this video, but I pulled the beloved. The beloved. The beloved is recognizing divinity in myself and in the other, and in relating to divinity from my own divinity to theirs, to the other. And it's the beloved is my fancy. The beloved is my fancy, my essence that is spirit incarnate. That's the way we're like, how did this work for healing? What is the healing episode or event I needed? The other card that I pulled at the same time with that was this beautiful magic card. And if you watch Chrissy Sawyer, which I hope you do, she pulled this card recently. And it's this idea of magic, of the recognition of divinity, to think that I have the whole universe within me. And yet I'm here. There's an irony involved that I'm here to experience it all, because I had to become part of it, my own creation, to know the joys of it in a full, fine way. And that's what healing is about. We come here. And so the beloved card, divinity within me and you. The magic card, understanding this and operating based on that principle. And then that my fancy is this beloved. So again, I had been thinking about these kinds of things, and I knew that I was receiving all this energy for the better part of 2 weeks. And I was asking my unseens about this. And one of the things that happened on the day that I pulled that card, I realized that I'm staying in a house with my in-laws, and my father-in-law wanted to go to a church that he's been desiring to do for a while, and he just hadn't done it, and he needs a ride. And so I just thought, communicate based on this card I pulled, divinity to divinity. What with that, the other person, by the way, doesn't have to recognize this or own this. It's just a truth. And so I made a very indirect and informal statement that just brought up this idea of church, because I had heard him express it earlier. And he said, oh yeah, they're going to be there. I've been wanting to go there. I took him. And that was an outworking, a manifestation of my divinity communicating with his, even though he wouldn't necessarily recognize any of this. Well, as I thought further through the day, and I mention this because it's kind of an important thing of seeing how healing occurs. This was part of that healing episode. And so what happened is, yesterday morning, something very unusual happened. I came in and into where I spend my time in meditation and seeking the spirits, and where I write in my journal every morning. And I usually start by writing in my journal, but I just felt like, hey, I needed to put some of this together. And I visualized, this vision just came to me, that there was this little shadow leaping around me that has been leaping around me. And as I realized it for most of my life, I didn't recognize it before, but I knew the influence of it was there in some ways, because there's always this blockage. And I realized it was because it was a part of me that had escaped. It was a part of me that escaped but hung around to make sure everything was okay. This is part of dealing with codependency. This little, and I call him, because it's part of me, this little Mikey, the shadow self that was outside of me but hanging very close to make sure that everything was okay. This thing of perfectionism, this thing of fixing me and fixing everybody else. And it partly came from what I experienced in my childhood. And as I realized this, I had to call on my unseens and my guides. I have 4 very specific ones that are very helpful, showed up, along with a specific spirit that helps me out. And I just came to this, and I needed to experience, and I went through this process that immediately they directed me to write this down. And I thought about this. I thought, you know what? I'm going to read this. Maybe it will help some of you. And then I'm going to share some things that I hope will help you even more. This is what I wrote. This is an insight, by the way, into this 2-week process. So please know that it wasn't just, I decided to sit down and write something. No, this is after going through the very specific spiritual exercises, spiritual seeking. And this is what happened. My 4 guides seated around me now, guarding the freshness of this new creation, one of remembering, rejoining our soul retrieval. There was this little shadow part of myself that was outside of me that I realized now had come to a point he wanted in, I wanted him in. My heart leads me to this, my heart guided, the completion of a vision that began a week or so ago, the vision with my parents and my shadow that fled my body, that has tagged along all my life, that piece of the soul of me who fled this self, for he could not bear what he identified with in my parents. This part of me did not know how to respond to the pain of my mother and father, for we saw and intuitively knew, this little self, shadow self, that each of us is spirit. I couldn't have said it then when I was a kid, but I sensed that there was something deeper within that was being blocked in my parents. This Mikey self could not reconcile the love he had for his parents, and how that love could not, no matter how he perceived in his incomplete knowledge and soul perceptions, he couldn't reconcile their self-destructive addictions of ego energy and their innate divinity contained in the flashes of their expression of spirit, their love, talents, and care. I saw in my parents, and this little part of me that had to flee, who couldn't break through, who couldn't fix them because he wanted to help them to see. I saw their greatness. I saw their love. I saw how brilliant they were, and how funny they were, and how warm they were. And yet, it seemed to all be obscured by the addictive behaviors. I wrote of this earlier in past journals, of their beauty. So as a young teenager who had been unable to accept what he perceived as abandonment of their potential, and abandonment of himself and his sister at time, this little Mikey fled into the arms of friends, of religion, and of almost anything that came along that would help him run. And so Mikey ran. That part of my soul was gone from within, but always with the help of good, kind, protecting ego doggedly overshadowing me. He wanted to justify our life stances, philosophies, and decisions. He did so by creating idealisms based on what I saw as divinity and pointing out a little shadow dancing about and joyfully pointing out all the evidence that they, whoever they were not living to their true potential. Everybody around me. So I projected, I generalized from my parents and the way I felt about that, and the shadow self that was created to protect me and ran from me, but always hung around, saying, look at them, look at how great they are. And that made for a positive me and a positive relationship with people. But I saw them as ideal. They needed to become ideal, perfect. And this is part of codependency. I wanted to fix them and bring them all to perfection. They needed my help. They do not. They did not. In other words, Mikey identified with lower life, ego expressions, and ego identities of others and myself, and insisted I relate to others on that level. This only gave my ego cause to point out how they needed my help. Preach to them, Michael. And without having Mikey within, I was incomplete. I was fractionated. With Mikey remembered, I have the advantage of seeing the divinity of others, understanding the distinction of the polarities of ego and heart, allowing those and just allowing them to be, allowing those and delighting in empathic knowledge and magic, which I've had for many years. As spirit incarnate, I can see the rich value of whole expressions of others and myself, of all of us, of the ego and heart self, of the combination of the polarities existing in beauty. Yes, my guides worked to help me complete this soul retrieval, and it needed to be completed. I couldn't just understand this. I needed to know how to remember to put this part of me that was outside of me back in. And this is not an easy thing to do. And many people use, the way I understand now from reading this, many people use help. And I would encourage you, if you need help, to get help. If you want to reach out to me, reach out to me. But there are others like Chrissy, who I refer to from time to time. She can help. Well, my guides were there. And one of them, who was especially equipped to be able to do this, ripped me open to my heart core. I mean, laid open the spiritual chest in a way. And I spoke to, and he, Mikey, spoke back. I spoke to Mikey, that shadow, always close, always present, always justifying others because he saw their ego selves as himself, identified with them in ego, and by detachment from Michael. This part of me wanted reattachment, wanted to come in. And he climbed in. I could see it. I could feel it. I was going through it. And this was not easy, and it was painful. This part of me climbed in slowly, and as discovering with me in my agony, discussing it with me, pulled himself into my heart. He pulled himself in as I was open there, with the guides there with me. Completion. Closure. There was a mental, emotional, and spiritual completion and closure as one of my other guides healed, as he climbed in, as Mikey climbed in, the other guide there healed this wound, this opening, this ripped open chest of me. I did not expect that this morning. What will be the effects and difference in life for me? I do not know. This has been a major healing experience. My totem birds, especially Bluebird, that holds the energy of inner child, helped call Mikey to attention for this week's long, really lifelong process. They are all my unseen's instrumental in this healing episode. Now my conscious thought, even as I hear others speaking, is relishing my understanding at a wholer soul level of our polar essence. I went on to write some other stuff, but this video is getting really long. And I want to just share this with you. As I thought back on this, and I thought, will I share this? And my unseens assured me, do what feels right. And this feels right, even though this is a long video. I want to share with you some of the elements that I see as I look back and as I thought about this yesterday through the course of the morning. And there are some of these elements that happen to me that I can see, that I can pull out. I'm not saying this is an order. I'm not saying this is the path. I'm saying by sharing these, some of this might resonate with you and might help you to go along your healing path. And so one of the things that happened is I needed to awaken. There was a further awakening I needed to this sense of my beloved, of my spirit incarnate, my heart within, my fancy, who showed me the path of awareness. So there was this awakening that my heart was saying, there's something here, all this energy you've been seeing. So this, listen to my heart, that's the first thing. And then become distinctly aware of what it is, that there's this knowledge of a team of helpers, of spirits about us who want to help, but we ask for help. And so we access the helpers, we ask for help. I did that. And then what happened was that I needed help because I recognized there was this shadow. There was this darkness in me. This is healing in love and light, or healing into love and light. And so there was this shadow who wished to be remembered, who wished to be part of all of this that we're experiencing. I needed that part of my soul back. And it was a lost part. And so sometimes there may be lost parts of you that need to be remembered, reintegrated. And so that's the next part, is that do the work. Ask the spirits how. Get help from somebody who really works in these things, and reintegrate, reunite with heart self, with the beloved, with the fancy, and go through this together in a fuller, complete way through this life. 6 things. Again, well, I'll tell you what, I will put this in the caption below. So this is just a general pattern. This is kind of what I see I went through. There may be elements of this that can be helpful to you. Maybe some of this that you're stuck on, some of this you hadn't thought of before. Whatever it is, use it for yourself. See what resonates and just go with it. And invoke your heart. Call on your heart energy, the spirit incarnate within you. And that is you. So this is the general pattern for this healing event that I went through. Together or separate, they may help you, they may help us. And what I want to leave you with today is simply love and peace. Enjoy the healing journey, even though it's painful and it hurts at times, because there are parts of us that we have neglected, that we haven't seen, we haven't been aware of. See if there are those parts there within you. Sometimes they're just within, they haven't escaped, but they do want to be loved back into a fullness, a wholeness. So blessing and peace, healing in and into love and light. And I will see you next time.